Welcome, everyone. My guest today is Lead Analyst Logan Mohtashami to talk about the economic stories of 2025 that he's thankful for. Before we get started, I want to thank our sponsor, Trust and Will, for making this episode possible. Logan, welcome back to the podcast.
It is wonderful to be here. It is Thanksgiving week. Wow, did this year move fast? A lot happened.
Oh my gosh, I can't even believe it. It feels like 5 years.
Yes, 5 years. And, the theme of, because it's Thanksgiving week, we're like, what do we want to give thanks for? And of course, I have my structural bias about the housing market being part of two higher rates in 2021 and 2022. But because of those actions, there's certain things that we all should be grateful for in 2025, and that's going to be the topic theme of the day.
I love it. Okay, I love a positive story here, especially about housing, especially as we head into a season that's maybe less busy. So let's talk about what are the positives for the 2025 housing market the way you see it.
So the number one positive thing is everyone hug. Give a mortgage spread a kiss, give it an extra piece of turkey, yams, mashed potatoes, any wonderful, delicious things that you could cook for Thanksgiving. But mortgage spreads this year was such a beneficial story. Of course, my thing is that I'm trying to teach people mortgage spreads across the country. And let me tell you something, there is a lot that needed to be learned. But the fact that mortgage spreads improved to the peak level of the forecast for 2025 meant that we actually had some time under 6.64%. And the last 4 months of existing home sales have been positive year over year. New home sales hit a 3-year high. Of course, that number is going to get adjusted lower a little bit. But, without mortgage spreads doing what it should have done this year, we would have had a much different story about the housing market. So I think that's hopefully one thing with the articles and the charts and everything, and teaching about the 10-year yield, 30-year mortgage, the slow dance. But then the next variable is the spreads.
I think the thing that surprised me about spreads this year is that they are vulnerable to outside influences, right? Like shocks in the system or just things that happen. I'm like, we had a lot of things this year that could have in another circumstance made the spreads wider, and that did not happen. I mean, if you think about the last time we saw a big shock was when the Silicon Valley Bank collapsed, right? So of course we have not had something like that, but we've had a lot of things.
It is interesting. In 2023, when the Silicon Valley banking crisis happened, we also have to remember that the Fed wasn't done hiking rates. I mean, they still hiked rates even with the Silicon Valley banking crisis
That's
in
crazy.
play. Yeah, but because of that, now, what does the history of U.S. economics tell us? That whenever the Fed tells the market they are done hiking rates, there's usually a big, huge bond rally and mortgage rates go lower. That's exactly what happened, but it went all the way down to the Hodor line, and it bounced off of that in I think December 28th of 2023. That was a really big rally we had, but mortgage rates got up to 8% because the spreads were really bad. In 2023, we would not have had 8% mortgage rates at all if the spreads were anywhere near normal. But 2024, they got better. And I think a lot of people, again, the confusion is people are told that the spreads can never get better unless the Federal Reserve buys mortgage-backed securities. There is no history that shows that to be the case for those people who read. We always say reading is a good thing. And in 2024, the spreads got better. We got at one point, 29 basis points away from normal spreads. That made such a huge difference this year. And then toward the end of next year, we should be somewhat back to normal again if everything moves correctly. And that's the history of U.S. economics. But mortgage spreads be the number one thing everybody should be thankful for.
Huge difference. Every weekend on the tracker, you talk about here's what normal spreads are. Here's where we would be on mortgage rates if we had the worst spreads. Here's where we would be if we had normal spreads. And we've been getting closer and closer and closer to what a normal spread would be. How close are we right now?
I mean, we're roughly like 30 basis points away from normal spreads, and that's so much better than, I always give examples like, I'll say if mortgage spreads were as bad as they were in 2023, mortgage rates today would be, 7.5%. As of this morning, but that's not the case anymore. But if mortgage spreads were back to almost normal, we're at 6% mortgage rates, so or even 5.8%. So there's still some room for improvement. Again, you don't need the 10-year yield to get down to, the Gandalf line at 3.37 to get sub 6% mortgage rates, but spreads improving to me not only got better as they should have, but also it helped housing demand, especially toward the end of the year.
Okay, what else are you thankful for? What else is a positive story for 2025?
Inventory, right?
Yep.
Active inventory. And for those who follow me on social media, you know how much social media inventory charts I put up. I always have my little infamous NAR inventory data that goes back to the early 1980s. We have our Altos data, which is very unique and prolific, I believe, in tracking inventory. But the whole concept of team higher rates in February 2021 was that we got to a level that for the first time in my life, I actually said, oh, we actually have low inventory. Like we actually authentically have a shortage. And of course, the goal that I had with the team higher rates model is that inventory just gets back to 1.52 to 1.93 million. When that happens and we're over 4 months of supply, the low inventory talk goes away, just like it did in the last decade. But it has to get back to those levels. And when we wrote that article in February of 2021, we need higher rates because this is not like the housing bubble where you're going to get like vertical inventory happening very soon, or the inventory channels are going to get us back to normal. The only way to do it is higher rates, days on markets grow, softness in mortgage demand, inventory can grow higher. And we got there. We got, I think the peak for 2025 will be 1.55 million. Now, normal inventory is 2 to 2.5 million. Going back decades, the housing bubble crisis in 2007, it got up to 4 million. But just getting back up to 1.55 as a peak, getting 4 months of supply, buyers get back into the game, right? This is not one of these savagely unhealthy seller markets anymore. I was looking for balance. It took a little bit longer than I thought, but we're finally there. And that's how you get affordability better. It can't just be, well, let's get mortgage rates down to 3%. That model isn't going to work in this current environment. So higher inventory, more concessions. And we see that by the builders, of course. Sellers are no longer in total control, and that is a positive for the housing market that lived a very unhealthy period of time from mid 2020 to early 2022, when active inventory just got to levels that the supply and demand equilibrium broke in a very bad way.
Absolutely. And everybody in our industry knows it. They, whether they were on the, trying to get a buyer to be one of the 20 offers accepted, whether they were, on the mortgage side, working as fast as they could, like it was crazy. It was crazy. So I also wanted to point out that our inventory is a little bit different than other inventory. We don't have condos in the mix. So it really is like for the Altos HousingWire data, it's single family homes that are available to buy, correct?
Yes, I mean we track the condo market, but for the tracker, we only show single family housing. I mean, we could track single family condos in any zip code in America, but for the tracker, it's single family homes that are available for sale, not in contract. And this is why our data is much lower than everyone else's. Everyone has like a pending contract into them, but we just want to get the raw inventory data out for everyone to see. This is exactly what is available to buy today. And then again, like what I say at events, we believe we're the most prolific housing trackers, and we'll take the last 3 years. When late 2022 came and the supply and demand equilibrium was changing, and we say as soon as we get to 4 million home sales, that whole thing should stop. It worked then. In 2024, the forward-looking data started to get better. And remember, with the trackers incorporating economics into it, bond markets, mortgage rates, 10-year yield spreads, I don't know how many people in America do this. Like, I
Right.
don't know anybody else that does it like how we do it, because that's taking out a lot of stuff. You got to be versed in a lot of things. And then all of a sudden, the housing market shifted mid-June. The inventory data started to stabilize. The demand data started to pick up. And we still have people today who just don't have access to that data, and they're still living off of thinking what was happening 6 months ago is still the case. So healthy year, price growth cooling down. It's, I think I'm going to get right to where my forecast will be in 2025, where last year I was still a little bit too low, and it's just a much healthier housing market when there's more choices out there, right? And it isn't a terrible seller market, because what happened after the mid part of 2020 and all of 2021 and early part of 2020 was extremely unhealthy. Like, even though sales were up and everything, we just simply had too many people chasing too few homes.
Absolutely.
And now that's not the case anymore. The monthly supply is over 4 months. Active inventory is back to the kind of the low levels of pre-COVID. All positive in my book. And I know I'm structurally biased when I say that, because that is something that I wanted to see since February of 2021.
It's also a counter narrative to the whole idea that, like, oh, things are crashing, people are like putting their, there's going to be a ton of inventory because people are selling and all this stuff. We're like, we've been waiting for that for years. Like, please put some more inventory on the market. That would be good for everybody.
What I think this is, if I have to give one critique to the public always thinks of supply as a vertical case with no demand. And naturally that's what they're not data analysts. They wouldn't put the equilibrium together. There has never been a vertical supply period in recent US history going back to the 1980s, except for 2005 to 8. And that's not a healthy situation. This is why we always say our new listings data, if something is breaking, the new listings data will go vertical. And then what happens is a lot of people say, don't buy a house. Why are you so stupid? Why are you buying a house? Home prices are going to crash. The deflationary collapse model. Now, I would argue that a lot of these people are just doomers who are trying to get attention. But we had one period in time in history where you did see vertical inventory. You saw distressed sales. You saw our new listings data, which was running at 250 to 400,000 per week for years. The last 5 years is like 30 to 90K. So there will be a time where inventory is so high and that it would be distressed sales and people just go, I don't want to buy it. That's the deflationary aspect of a bad economy that nobody wants to take that's never happened, right? We've pretty much been at 4 million existing home sales for years now, while the inventory data was picking up, right? There wasn't no collapse in demand off of that late 2022. After that happened, home sales never collapsed anymore. And we're just working off of a better supply and demand equilibrium. So I understand the theory that some people say that if you have a deflationary collapse, no American should ever buy a house because let prices crash. That only happened one time in over 80 years. And none of the data lines that we track over 80 years were showing that in the last 14. And this is why we can explain what happened in the last decade, what happened during COVID, and what also happened in the last 3 years, especially at the end of 2022. This is why we structurally believe in people who have economic models. Look at their models, look at their forecasts, see if they know what they're talking about. I am at a 100% clip that these people don't know what they're talking about, but it's good for attention.
It is. Okay, what's next?
Well, number 3 is it. This is my personal thing as well. I'm glad that I saw people push back on the 50-year mortgage. I'm glad because for me, it's, again, Sarah, you didn't know me in the last decade, but in the last decade, I had this like running crusade against people that said we need to ease lending standards. I go, no, we don't. Lending standards are very liberal. Just go look at the FHA guidelines. That's not the problem. A lot of people just think that, well, there's no more low FICO score home buyers anymore, and they're never going to be. It's never going to happen again because people that struggle with credit card debt and miss installment payments don't have a lot of reserves and their cash flows. They're traditionally not going to be home buyers. But this is what happened this year. You have to think about it in this light. Political economic theory, which I don't like, is really showing itself in housing. So why are all these government intervention ideas coming into the housing market? Why? Because they favor baby boomers. Right, let's see. Florida wants to get rid of property taxes. Why? They have a lot of baby boomers who are mad. Homeowners are voters, right? The cost of housing is a lot to them. 1 million capital gains, let's take it from 500,000 to 1 million. Who does that help out? Baby boomers. And the Republicans are hearing it from their side because 1 million capital gains is New York and California. Those are blue states. And for Republicans who push that, that they're hearing it on that side. So a little bit of pushback on that. But the 50-year mortgage was like, I mean, I'm going in Congress and testifying against a 40-year mortgage. So the 50-year mortgage is just not a viable. Your idea can't be to subsidize a marketplace whenever things get bad. It's you have to let the marketplace work itself out. Now, inventory's grown, price growth has cooled down, the market is working itself, so it's doing its thing. But to always go back into some form of subsidization, an added one already to a sector that's very subsidized, it was good to see that unanimously everyone, like, it was, oddly enough, in this crazy year, the 50-year mortgage united everyone in America together.
It
That is
did.
a really terrible idea, and let's not do this. So I'm giving thanks that people finally figured it out. You just can't keep on pushing the amortization out all the time.
No, really interesting, especially because you pointed out some of those earlier things or other things were aimed at baby boomers, which the 50-year mortgage was really aimed at first-time home buyers, young home buyers, right?
It is. It's just, like, the portable mortgage. It sounds interesting, but we don't have portable mortgages in America, and you can't like write them back into the contracts. Those mortgages are securitized, they're already investments. So that, if you want to talk about something down the line or something, but it affordability is an issue for a lot of things, and I understand why they're doing a lot of things, because if you get rid of property taxes, your housing cost goes down, right?
Right.
Affordability. If you take $1 million capital gains, right, off the table, baby boomers will be able to sell their house and keep more of their money. Life becomes more affordable when you're paying less in taxes because you have more cash. Right? So that the 50-year mortgage, of course, is just like throwing an idea out there. I know Austin Goolsbee, the Chicago Fed, he said, well, if there's a 50-year mortgage, monetary policy might not need to ease. It's just like, shut up, man. No, we're not doing this. We're not doing the 50-year mortgage. We're not, so it is good. You always wonder if the public will just see this as a really good idea and try to jump on board. And, then you've got to go out there and be the, you know,
The
grumpy,
Grinch.
the grumpy chart daddy Grinch, and just kind of say, this is not really a good idea. You have to let it, take its course. So it was good to see. I give thanks for that, because I think the American public, that you're no.
No, it's good. It's good to see some rationality out there. Okay, anything else?
Just the final thing is, as crazy as everything has been, right? All this economic nuts case from COVID. We go from COVID all the way down to where we are in 2025. We had the sharpest increase in the Fed funds rate in recent history. Mortgage rates went from 3 to 7%. We have all this the tariffs and trade wars and everything. For the most part, the economy is still intact. And I always fall back to my number one thing, that if I had to talk to any analyst in America, any young kid that wants to learn about economics, you have to verse yourself with the 2005 bankruptcy reform laws and the 2010 qualified mortgage laws. To me, that was the most prolific laws that were passed, and it isn't shocking that if it wasn't for COVID, we'd still be in the longest economic and job expansion ever recorded in history. Why? Because we do have, for a mature and wealthy economy, we do have good demographics. Household balance sheets still look, excellent. Of course, there's stress in the lower income and renter side of the equation, but as a total, we've taken a lot of shocks, right? Some of them are
Yes.
self-inflicted. Some of them are just a byproduct of what's happening around the world, and we are still intact. All right. Economic cycles come and go. We have recession models for ourselves, but it is a testament to our people, right? No matter all this noise, all these recession calls since 2010, everything, all this stuff thrown at us, America still, held its ground, and we're still outperforming a lot of economies out there. And I always fall back to, in a service-based, consumption-based economy, household balance sheets matter, and those laws really prevented leverage from happening on the credit side. I just put up some charts on Instagram to show household debt leverage. It's so low now, like on a historical basis, and I think we you never hear enough credit on that because those are two government rules that came into play, but it really set the groundwork. And now that we're coming into 2025, of course, we have a lot. Job growth is slowing down. Everybody's worried about if there's a recession. But regardless, the last 15 years, we held our ground, right? And we got out of COVID very, very fast. And the whole concept of the COVID-19 recovery model, written on April 7th, 2020, when the St. Louis Financial Stress Index went lower and the 10-year yield was above 62%, and I said, game's on, we're running it now. The core belief was still household balance sheets. We're in a good spot, So I think that's what I not only give thanks for this year, but for the last 15 years. Again, if it wasn't for COVID, we'd still be having the longest economic and job expansion in history.
I love it. Love the positivity and really the pointing out, the things that we can be thankful for, even as people in housing, because sometimes we're on the brunt end of that, especially for the recession. Would love to remind everybody or let everybody know we did a special unplugged session of the podcast that will be going live on Black Friday. It's a fun listen. It was fun to record. So you guys listen to that. Check out the tracker. Logan, as always, thank you so much for being on.
And thank you for tolerating me for another year. And 2026, woo, Nelly, we got the Housing Economic Summit with a lot of great people. A lot of friends of mine that are going to be there talking. And the nerd tour, the Chart Daddy nerd tour is going to take it to another stage next year. So we can't wait. And let's end the year off strong.
Sounds amazing. Happy Thanksgiving if I don't talk to you before then.
You too, Sarah.